the script today, and that will navigate through our objectives as we navigate through this document today. All right, so as you can see, we have a lot of objectives to do, and as if you've ever been part of my training before, you know most of the trainings I do try to implement hands-on training. With that, I do have some templates for you today to mess with on your own. So I'm excited to provide those resources for you today. So as we know, if you get to this Google Doc is a resource with a plethora of resources at your fingertips. You may want to make sure you're on outline mode. And what will happen there is you will see you can just click on these objectives and navigate throughout the document as we navigate through the recording/video live stream. Our first objective is let's explore resources. I do have a quick slide deck to go over. That slide deck can be found in our Google Help website. So we're on objective 1, let's explore resources. Also, this is where we're going to learn more about the 3 parts of Google Forms. So this is very important to get the basic understanding of Google Forms. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the Google Help website, to the Google Form page. And when I get there, you will see a slide deck, and we'll talk about Google Forms in greater detail. So as you can see, there's a plethora of resources on this home page regarding Google Forms. And you will also see there is a slide deck embedded inside here. We're going to go ahead and pull up this slide deck and go over the basics of Google Forms here in a minute. What is Google Forms? Many of you already know what it can do, but let's just dive deeper. Google Forms is a web-based app within Google Workspace, so it's part of your Google Workspace environment that allows you to collect data. Compare it to other apps like SurveyMonkey, Poll Everywhere, Qualtrics to some degree. It has ways to collect data by a form response, and it will then provide you in charts and graphs in a spreadsheet. So that's what it does. So these are the same resources for the most part that are on the Google Help homepage as well, but I wanted to make sure it's on this slide deck for future. And also on this slide deck, there's even more resources. I like to provide other trainers. So in case you don't like my style, there's always other people that are Google Workspace experts. One of them, as you well know, is Alice Keeler that I still have called stock. She does have a complete video guide to Google Forms. So you can definitely check out these resources as well. One of the things I do not go over in the state of Iowa is quizzes. Quizzes doesn't seem to be a high demand in the state of Iowa. That would be more in the education skew. So I don't go over that, but there might be some case scenarios such as a trainer or a specialist of some sort. They want to make sure they have the knowledge of something. And quizzes is a really good feature within Google Forms. So there's another resource regarding quizzes in Google Forms. This is probably the most difficult understanding of Google Forms. There are 3 parts to a Google Form. There is the live part, the edit/response part, and there's a spreadsheet part. So I always say there's 3 parts to a Google Form. And the good news, I'm not the only one that says that. You have the live portion. So this is, again, terminology. The live portion is where the end person completes out the form. The live, or also known as the preview, is when the end user, the respondent, is filling out the form. Okay. How do you know you are providing the correct URL for a live portion of the form? One way to do so is either get it by the I. When you're in the edit portion, you will see the I. We know by now the I also stands as preview, right? Preview what you're doing. That is how you get to the live portion. So if you want the respondent to fill out the form, you provide them that URL by clicking on the I. What are other visual indicators? Look at the URL. In the URL, you will see there is a view form. That's the end of the form. That is where the respondent or the end user completes. That's the right portion of the form. The other way, some people get so confused on that. So let's give you an example. If you see a pencil at the bottom, I do not want you to think that everybody can edit this form. We know by now a pencil gives you a visual indicator that you can edit something, right? But really, if Jolene and I are working on this form together as a collaborator, and she goes to the live portion and I go to the live portion, I'm going to see the pencil. Because why? We are editors. It just gives you a quick way to navigate to the edit portion of the form. Doesn't mean that the live portion people, the end users that are not collaborators, do not need to edit. So for example, if I gave the live portion to John in this scenario, he would not see the pencil because he is not a collaborator. Okay. So that's just very important. Many people kind of so-called panic when they see the pencil. It's just because you're an editor. So it's always good practice to always have someone outside the collaborator bucket to test out your form. The other portion of the form is the edit/response portion of the form. This allows editors to create, adjust questions, view responses in a form. It's like two-folded. Okay, so how do you know you're in the edit portion? You will see a lot more menu options, such as questions, responses, and settings. You will see those options in your Google form in the edit portion of the form. The other thing you will see is more menu options, such as 3 dots in Google Land. That's right. You will see a palette, a view, an eye, and so much more. So again, another visual indicator to know that you're in the particular portion of edit. Third option is just, again, editing the questions, a capability of adjusting your question. And then again, it is two-folded, right? We can also see the responses in a chart form. So we'll be able to view the responses in a summary format, question format, or individual responses. We'll dive more into that later. But again, what this portion of the training is to understand the portion of the edit portion. Third option is the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet, you can actually have the form responses of your end users that complete into a spreadsheet. It can dump into a spreadsheet. It's ongoing and maintained simultaneously. So if someone fills something out, it'll automatically go to the spreadsheet. So the edit portion is linked to the live portion, and it's also linked to the spreadsheet. They're like all three combined, okay? So you can create a spreadsheet. This is always optional, strongly encourage that you do, okay? And this is an example of a spreadsheet dump, lack of a better word. It will sync and every response goes into the spreadsheet portion. So this is a sneak peek of what you'll learn in the advanced training. You'll learn a lot more stuff on how to connect using both sheets and forms. So we won't go over this portion of the slide deck, but you can create a lot of workflows within both forms and sheets. It's just a great combo. And yes, it has the wow factor. So that's a quick sneak peek. You can kind of go through that slide deck and you will see some of the topics that we will discuss in the advanced training next week. Next topic is Objective 2. If you are following along, as always, we always encourage you to participate, but if you don't, no worries. Our next objective is we're going to complete a form. We're going to be in the live portion. This is also has more, it's two-folded as well. We're going to create this identical form, and that will give you an understanding of how the form questions are set up. So we can see how it's going to function as a respondent. Once we know how it functions as a respondent, you will then know how to create those questions in that same format. Oh, checkbox, yes. Multiple choice, yes, like that. That's going to give me what I need. So the best way to do this, in my humble opinion, is to fill out the form that we're going to create so we understand how we're going to build it. So this is pretty much identical to the form that we're going to create in Objective 3. However, we're still in Objective 2. So for those that are joining live stream or for those that are watching the video at a later time, feel free to fill out this form. It's live. It won't go away. So what we're going to do is let's just look at a few things. We have a nice header. It's identified. It's very branding in the sense. It's the J&J Google Tour, right? You'll notice it's also collecting my email address. I'm currently trainer 13. It's automatically collecting my email address. It also has the new feature that allows us to save as we go if you have a Google account. So it doesn't mean it to be a state of Iowa account. It just means that when you come back to this at a later time, if it's a longer form, it will remember as you go. So you have this new option, draft restore, because I was on this earlier under trainer 13. So that's a really nice feature, especially in longer forms. there is a post on the Google Help page or on our objectives if you want to learn more. That's a brand new feature. So let's look at the first question. The first question is, what is your favorite Google Workspace app? This is a sample of a multiple choice. Multiple choice means only get to select one answer. Only get to choose one. So this doesn't matter what you select, but do notice that there is an option to do other. And if you select on other, you do have the capability of adding your own text. So again, this is an example of a multiple choice question. It's a radio button, only select one. So go ahead and select one. The next question is select 3 of your favorite Google Workspace apps. Now, go ahead and just check 4 of them and see, select 2 and notice that it's giving you a help text saying select at least 3. So what we've done here is used a checkbox question. That's pretty self-explanatory. That a checkbox by definition is you can select more. That's different than a multiple choice. So I can select all these if that applies to me. But I do want, in this particular question, I put a response validation, very similar to data validation in Google Sheets. I want them to at least select 3. I could change that to say at least select 4. I am giving the end user a help text at the bottom saying, please select 3. Also, not only that, it's giving me the help text. I'm also cannot move forward because I said at least 3. So you do have some ways to actually validate the response. So I'm going to follow what the guidelines say, and I'm going to respond with 3. I could do 4. That was my thing. I could do all that if I choose to. The next thing is I have the drop-down option. Drop-down is what is your favorite training. You'll notice then you'll be able to select the drop-down. And this is really valuable when you have a long list to select from, okay, because it takes up a long real estate if you do not choose the drop-down. So again, drop-down is the same functionality of multiple choice, select one. However, it just allows a better material design for your end user. So go ahead and select one. The next one is rate your Google Workspace training. Again, maybe better terminology than instead of awful and amazing. This is an example of linear scale. You can just Google linear scale and you can always get good ideas on how to do a linear scale. One fun idea is always add emojis. You can always add pictures, and that's another option for you too. But in this case, let's just go ahead and you can see like 1 is bad, 5 is great. I'm going to go ahead and select 5. But that's an example of a linear scale question type. The next one is rate your Google Workspace apps. This is a sample of multiple choice grid, slightly different than your linear scale. Okay. So if you'll notice on this one, I can select each topic is on the left-hand side, and now I have put in 3 criteria. They only get to select 1 inside there. Okay. The next one's very useful. One question I have received is we want to be able to determine availability when they can fill in the blank, right? A checkbox grid would work really well for that. So what you could do is you can actually put the date of availability Monday through Friday on the left-hand side. You can add multiple columns. So in this case, it's a checkbox. By definition, checkbox means I can select more than one. Notice in this question, I didn't make every response required because they might not be available AM or PM, right? So maybe on Tuesday, I'm not even available AM or PM. That's how I determined to write this question. I could have added a column NA, right? That's an option. But again, less clicks, better for the end user, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and select my availability. But just know that it's a checkbox, so I can be both available AM or PM. Next question is an example of date and time. You can always just do date, or as you can just do time. However, most people probably just need the date. But again, availability question, maybe wanting to know if they are available. This would work for you as well. You can go ahead and just notice that it does give you a calendar drop down. So you can go ahead and select a date of your choice, and you can put in a time of your choice. And you do have a drop down of AM and PM as well. The next one is provide one word or short phrase. How do you think? This is an optional or a text field. Notice it's shorter than the second one underneath or below it. This is a short answer. The next one is a paragraph style. So you have kind of a visual indicator. The line is shorter than the long line. So in this case, this would be good for like 140 characters. You can actually limit the response with some response validation. So I'm just going to say great in this example, short and sweet. But that's an example of a text box. Next one is a paragraph style. So again, you can make this length longer. Obviously, you could give them a whole bunch of words to write. It gives them a lot of options to type more, and so on. And you notice if I hit enter, it will go to another line. So this is more of a summary option for you. So that's a really nice for longer text box that you need. Words are hard today. The next one is a little different. It's a multiple choice. We already did a multiple choice. The question is, how is your day going? I'm going to be honest, my day has not been very good. So meh would have been a good option for me today. But good or bad, right? It's just this is just an example of what you can do regarding the answer. So we can actually take whatever answer we're going to select, will take you to another page in the so-called or another section in Google Forms. So it's called section based on answer. This works for both multiple choice and drop down. So obviously selecting one of the choices, and then it will take you to a different section in our page. So if you want to just kind of see how this works, if you select good, you'll hit next. You'll see that it'll take you to a page with a smiley face that's happy, right? If you go back, because maybe you changed your mind and said today is not such a good day, you will then see if you go down here and select bad, it will give you to a page, to a not such a happy smiley face. Okay, so there's no wrong answer. Hopefully you're having a good day. But the point of that particular demonstration and what we're going to build is you can actually adjust your questions based on the answers. And that can make it very useful, especially in really long forms. You don't want them to always hit NA if it doesn't apply to them. If it's truly an NA because they fall in this bucket, send them to a different bucket in the form, right? So it's really important how you build the forms. If you want people to have a good day to fill out these questions, and those who are having a bad day fill out these questions, then send them to that section in your Google form. But you're going to have a conditional form question to send them to the right bucket. That's how section-based works. So we're going to build that today. Go ahead and hit submit if you are following along. But that is the live portion. Okay. Notice as we hit the submit button, we did add a custom confirmation. Have a great day. Notice that you can submit another response right here. I decided to have that show. You can customize that. You also have the option, I decided to do this to see previous responses. This gives you the analytics of the entire form. This is up to you if you choose to do that. But you will see then all the responses because I decided to do that. Not that that's a normal, but you also have the capability of sharing the results as they're submitted if you choose to. That's not a default. That is just an additional setting. So that is just a really beneficial tool if you choose to. So let's go back to the Google Doc and let's start building this form. So we've done objective 1 and objective 2. Objective 3 is we're going to make a copy of a form that's got the questions in there, but we're going to build it. And so it is not a typing class. So I don't want you spending a whole bunch of time typing all the answers and all the questions. We kind of know by now how to create a Google form in the sense you go to your Drive and create a Google form. So with that, we're going to go to objective 3 and we're going to make our own copy so we can learn how to do these different question types and make sure our settings are ready to go. So let's go ahead and build a Google form. Let's go ahead and click on that. It will direct you to a copy of. Make a copy of this. And what I would always say is make a copy of it, name the document, and put it in a good folder infrastructure. That is even more important, especially with Google Forms, because we will be creating a Google Sheet later, and it will automatically put that sheet in the same folder infrastructure as well. So those times that I repeat that so many times, it's because it's really important to get in the habit of that. So let's do what is best practice. Go ahead and rename it, and just go ahead and just say your name, whatever, sample, whatever works for you. It doesn't matter. This is just like a name of a document. Does not give you the title. They don't see this. This is just your naming scheme within your Google Drive. Now within Google Forms, you actually click on the folder icon and you would then decide where you want to locate it. Very similar in a doc, sheets, or slides. But when you click on the folder icon, I would suggest creating a new folder because we're talking about a new app. Click new folder, and I would call it Google Forms Training. And click on the blue button to create the folder. And then you'll notice the folder is empty. And then you will go ahead and click move here. So now we've made a copy, and you would be able to then have it in your Google Drive infrastructure. Now, this is just a template. You'll see that it's not exactly the same form that we just completed because it's not done. So we need to edit this form. How do we know we're in the edit portion? Let's just look at those visual indicators that we talked about earlier. We have a folder icon. We have a whole bunch of menu options over here. We have these options over here. We have a whole bunch of menu options here. We can see the responses here and so much more. So we know we're in the edit portion. We also can see the URL at the top says that's right, edit. Those are all good visual indicators that you're in the edit portion of the form, or also the creation of the form, or also the response portion of the form, okay? So you'll notice in this particular Google form, it has 3 sections. We will dive into that. But regardless, the very first thing after you name the document and put it in a good folder infrastructure is we always look at the settings. What is your purpose of your Google form? Is this something that's public for anyone in the state of Iowa in the sense of citizens, public citizens to fill out? Then you really need to look at the settings. So let's go ahead and navigate to settings. If you've been in Google Forms before, settings has changed. It's now in part of the menu options in the middle of the page versus the cog. So it's just a little different. That is an update within the last year, which I think is nice. But now we have 3 sections in the settings, I think 3. We need to review these. So we want to make sure just 2 of them. So first of all, we are not going to make this a quiz. As I mentioned, I'm going with the 80-20 rule. Most of us will not need a Google form to be a quiz. That's why I provided you a resource, but you do have the capability in your settings to make it a quiz, and we're going to ignore that portion. If you want more, please reach out to me and I can assist you. The next step that we do look at is we're going to go to responses. So go ahead and click on the drop down, and you'll see there's a whole bunch of things that we need to look at. Some really important ones. Do you want to collect an email address? Most cases, that is how you want it done. So you'll notice it is toggled to the right. It is turned on, okay? Next thing is, do you want the respondents to get a copy of their response? In this example, for demonstrations and training, I am selecting always. But honestly, that is not something I always have on, okay? That means when I fill out this form as a respondent or end user, I can either, depending on how you, the creator, sets it up, can receive a copy of my response, okay? The other thing is you can allow response editing. That is very rare. Not very often do you want to have your end user or your respondent to have a chance to edit the form that they already filled out. If that's the case, you can turn that on. That's a really good tool with scripts and so much. But in this current time, most users don't need that capability. They fill out the form, they're done. You do not need them to go back and have the capability of editing their response. Okay, but you do have the capability of allowing that if you choose to. The next one's really important, and I actually highlighted that, emphasized that in our Google Doc. The next one stumps people in many ways. Let's look at it. Requires sign-in. Restrict users in the state of Iowa and trusted organizations. In this example, I did restrict it. I don't have to. If I wanted this to be for the citizens of the state of Iowa, for the mom, the pa, and everybody else, then I need to uncheck that. That means because they do not have a state of Iowa Google account. So having that unchecked is going to be very important, okay? So this again, if you're making one for someone that is not the state of Iowa Google users, you need to uncheck that, okay? So if you're sending this to IWD, DHS, those users that are not part of the Google domain, you need to make sure that is unchecked. If you're posting this on a website, you need to have it unchecked, okay? We're going to go ahead and just leave it on because you guys are on our live stream or you're watching the YouTube. You want to learn more about Google Workspace and how it can be used. And this is the default setting that I have set up. So we're going to go ahead and move it back to the right if you already did that. The other thing that stumps people too is I get this question. I turned on limit to one response. If you turn that on to the right, it has to, I'll go ahead and show you. It tells you what the requirement is. Respondents will be required to sign into Google. They have to have a Google account. Now, this means does not have to have a state of Iowa Google account, but a Google account. So this is not a good option for the public. Okay, not a good option for the public. So I'm going to uncheck it because, again, not something we're going to use. Let's go back to the presentation. Let's go to the next one. I'm sorry, the presentation. There's options here as well. The next one is show progress for bar. So like, for example, if you have a really long form, let them know how much longer they have. So when you are filling out the live form, they will see that, oh, you're 50% done, 75% done. That's very beneficial, especially in long forms. Okay, so you might want to show that progress bar to help give them a better option. Now that we can save the work as we go when they have a Google account, that is helpful, but this still gives them an indication of how long the form is. Shuffle question order would be good if I was an educator, not real good for maybe a normal form, but you might want the questions to automatically shuffle. So I'm not highly used because that's not what our end game is. Go ahead and change the confirmation message. Notice when we filled out the form earlier, I wrote, have a great day. Obviously not real professional, but this is really important where you might have further instructions. So if you go back to the presentation and go under confirmation message, you can click edit. If you click edit, go ahead just for this demonstration. You could go ahead and type in have a great day. Otherwise, it will give you the default, your response has been recorded. But I use this a lot to customize to let them know what's going to take place after they completed the form. If you have any questions, please go to GoogleHelp-Iowa.gov or contact Google Iowa, or you'll be receiving an email shortly in your inbox. You see, you're giving them direction. It's the landing page. So again, I'm just going to make it simple, but know that you can customize that confirmation message. So I'm going to go ahead and type in have a great day and click save. Now this one's used a lot, excuse me. Show link to submit another response. So notice in this one, some people maybe need to do multiple. So this depends. If you want to limit to one response, then don't show this button, okay? If you want to limit to one response, not that it's going to limit, but it's not going to be as easy for them to submit another, right? It's not going to limit, but maybe that's a case scenario. But most people will show submit another response. Gives them a one last click. I got to do this again. This is a status report. I got to do all my monthly status reports. Instead of making them go back to where they found the live link, give them the capability to submit another response. Again, you have to determine how you want to build your form. But now you know what you can and cannot do. This is something that's not used a lot. But can be used. If you want to be more collaborative on this Google form, like you want to be able to view the analytics of the responses, then you might want them to view results summary. That's this button. That is this button, see previous responses. That's what that does, okay? That gives us the capability to see whenever we click on that link, it takes us to a URL called View Analytics, and it gives us the capability of seeing the responses of the form, okay? Now, not used as much because maybe you don't want to share that information, right? So again, you have to determine that. By default, it's currently off, but I just want to be able to show you what it can do, okay? The next one is new. Disable autosave for respondents. I do not see why you would turn that on, because disable would be turning that feature off. So we want to keep it off. And that gives us the capability, if they have a Google account, to be able to save as they go, just like I demonstrated earlier. It remembered where I was at last time, up to 30 days. So again, just a great way, because we know we all get interrupted and kind of forget where we're at. So this is a nice feature that I would not turn off unless you truly think it's not something you want. The next ones are something that, like, you know how you plan to build your forms for the future, right? These are your default forms, default settings. So there's not that many here, but they are very helpful. Every time you create a new form, do you want, every time you want to create a new form, so this is not this one, a new form, or for future forms. So it's like your format style default, right? How do you want it to populate automatically? One is collect email addresses by default. Do you want that on every time you create a form so you don't have to even think about it? You could do that. The next one is, do you make most of your questions required? Instead of have to make sure that you set it required, then make every question default. There's really no wrong. This is your choice. So both of these options is your choice, your preference. What is your case scenario? But you do have some defaults for future creations of Google Forms inside your settings. So again, there is a lot of information on the Google Doc as well. I know that's a lot, but I can tell you one thing that you need to learn from this particular demonstration is when you are setting up settings, you need to make sure it's the first thing you do. What is your purpose of the form? Who is your audience? Then go to your settings. I can't tell you how many people don't do that, and that's like, it didn't work. Well, then you probably restricted it. You know, so you have to look at your settings. So first thing, who's your audience? Go to settings, set it up the way you want. Okay, that's just really important. Then start building your questions. So we now are in objective 5. So we're moving along. What we're going to do in objective 5 is we're going to hit each question type and build each question type. Okay. So we're going to go through each one of them. We already saw the live portion of what it looks like for the end user, the respondent. So now we're going to go ahead and do objective 5, which is do these different types of question types. Okay. So we're just going to go in order. And again, I didn't want you guys spending time to make questions and types, and it just makes it easier to follow along. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the questions. And first thing we're going to look at is at the bottom here is the second box in there is, you'll notice, what is your Google Workspace app? So I just clicked in the text box there. You'll notice that is just a box that I typed in that question. Okay, pretty simple there. So what we have is we want to make this a multiple choice. So what we can do in the drop down over here, you have all these options to adjust your question types. Google will usually try to help you determining what type of question would fit your criteria, usually by just reading what your question is. By reading, I mean using this artificial intelligence. So like, for example, are you having a good day? It might give you good, bad, whatever, or it might give you a yes or no. It might tell you what might be a good choice, okay? So just know that it will try to help you as you creating a question on the go. In this case, we're just trying to learn the different question types because that's usually what we need to learn how to do. So first question type is multiple choice. So I'm clicking on the drop down and we're going to select multiple choice. As we look at this question, I just want to point out I already added some help text so we know what type of question we want to add. But this is an example of a description or a little small help text underneath the question. So you'll notice that is available under your 3 dots, and you can turn on a description. Also future, or in the past, it was called help text. So this might be like providing them more guidance on the question that you're looking for, or a type of format that you want. In this case, I used it as an example of what we're going to do today. So let me just pull that up to give you an example. So you can see the live portion. So you can see this is what we're building. So we're building a multiple choice. This is an example of a text box, and we're going to add an option other. So we're currently building this right now. So what we're going to do is now notice we're going to go ahead in the option. We're going to, you can, if you don't like typing, you can always go back to the document and follow along. I might do that from time to time, but I would go to what question we're at, what is your favorite Google Workspace app, and then I'm just going to cheat and I'm going to copy this so I don't have to type all this. So I'm going to copy that information. And now you'll notice how cool this is, because some of us might actually create the questions in a Google Doc, and then we just need to paste it in there, and it does a really good job. Might need to tweak a little bit, but I could have just typed in Gmail, Calendar, and Drive and just hit return and got to the next line. But again, we're not here to type. But notice the add other is slightly different. We don't really want it to say add other. We want to use the feature add other. Okay, so we need to actually remove one of the response types inside here. So obviously the X would remove add other, because that's not how I wanted to build it. I wanted to use the feature add other so they can add their own text. So I'm going to go ahead and click remove, and I'm going to then choose the other option, add other. And now it looks slightly different. And I'm going to remove this one. This isn't right. Oh, I did that wrong. My bad. Add other. That looked wrong for a second. So we've got Gmail, Calendar, Drive, and other. Awesome. And if you always want to spot check yourself, you can always click on the preview, the eye, and see what it looks like. And you can see that we've got Gmail, Calendar, Drive, and other. Awesome. That looks good. We don't need to fill it out, but that's the way I want it to look. So now we know we're in the live portion because, one, we got the view form, and we got the pencil, because why? I'm a collaborator. I'm the owner of this. So I can either, to get back to the creation or the edit portion of the form, I can go back to the tab that I had open, or I can click on the pencil to get back to the, that's right, the edit portion of the form. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the tab that I was on, and we're going to now navigate to question, I don't want to say, where are we at? We are at the select 3 of your favorite Google Workspace apps. So go ahead and click on the text box, and then you will see then we want to change this question type to, that's right, a checkbox. The other thing I want to point out, you'll notice that in all the questions, they have an option for text. Pretty self-explanatory, right? You ask a question in words, but you do have an option to add an image for a question type, for a question field. So we're not going to do that today, but I do want to point that out. Some of us really do want to make it a dynamic graphic designed form. You can add an image to be the question as well, okay? So just be aware of that. That is an option throughout the entire Google form. With that, we're going to change this selection to checkbox. By definition, by now we know a checkbox is where we can select more. I'm going to go back to the Google Doc if that's too fast for you, but we're just noticing I'm just going to use this nice little objectives and just go right to select 3 of my favorite Google Workspace apps. And now, again, I'm just going to go ahead and copy Gmail, Calendar, Docs, and I'm going to copy everything but add other, because I know how to do that better now this time. But again, I'm just selecting that information and I'm copying it, because I don't want to type all that, because you'll see me how poor of a typer I am. So type, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. And you'll notice it copied that over nice and easy for me. So now you'll notice the no longer a radio button when it's a checkbox. It's actually that's right, a box. And then I want to give them a capability of adding other as well. All right, now do you remember when we filled out this form, we actually required them to at least fill out, that's right, at least 3. So we need to do something different on this form, on this particular question, excuse me. We need to do some response validation. Now, this is your so-called homework assignment. Every time that you're new to Google Forms and you don't understand each question type, and you're like, I don't know exactly what this can do. Each question type does have a 3 dots at the bottom. And we know what 3 dots means. Dot, dot, dot. Google's got more for you. The thing is each question type has different capabilities. It's not the same for each one of them. So you'll need to understand that maybe I'm not sure how to set this checkbox one up. Maybe I should look at the option one, a text box question or a paragraph text question. Each one of them is different. We will hit some of them, the most common ones, but please know that to always check out the 3 dots at the bottom and determine what you need to do with that. Notice in this one, we do want to try to show you the response validation in this particular question. We're going to go ahead and click the 3 dots and select response validation. We know what the question was filled out was. It had the 3, had to select at least 3, right? So notice then we have that option here. We have select at most, select exactly, select at least. Well, in my case, in my scenario, we chose select at least. And how many did I say you have to select? 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do 3. And then I'm going to type in help text. Remember, that was very helpful for me to know why it wouldn't let me keep going. So I'm going to say, please select at least 3. Obviously, you can adjust this to what fits your needs, but this is an example of giving some more response validation in the checkbox. Each one of these question types has a response validation. It's just slightly different. And I promise you, there's tons of resources on there. So let's just double check. Let's just see how we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the preview. Don't feel like you have to, but this is just a really good way when you're brand new to Google's Forms. It's just a good way to double check. Okay, that looks good. It's giving me the notice when I did 2, please select 3. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Okay. So the other thing is you notice that each one of these questions I've already made required. Just to make it easier for us for most part. So notice at the bottom here, each question type does have the option to make it required. I have already toggled it to the right using that copy feature. But if you decide that maybe this question shouldn't be required to be completed by the end user, you can always toggle it to the left or the right, depending on your particular needs. We also have the option to delete a question. So maybe you made a mistake, you might want to delete it. The other feature that's really powerful is copy, duplicate this question. Maybe you're doing a checkbox question and you just need to change the title each time. Duplicate is a really nice feature. It will copy the entire question and the answers that you have. So a lot of nice features. So just make sure that you're aware of those options at the bottom. So let's go down to the next one. We're in the next one. What is your favorite training? This is an example of a drop down. So again, we're going to select short answer and we're going to do drop down. We use drop down quite a bit, again, like a long list. So this is another example. You could go back to the Google Doc or type it, whatever works for you. But what is your favorite training? I obviously went with a shorter list, but again, drop down just gives it another way of doing a multiple choice in theory. You do not get the add and other. That's an important feature that you do not get with drop down. So again, this comes down to if you want them to have an add other, like we've done for the checkboxes and for the multiple choice, you do not have that option in a drop down. If you really think of how it's built, that makes sense. However, just be aware of that. Drop boxes are very useful within mobile devices. So drop down you see when you are completing Google Forms on mobile devices as well. But again, notice the 3 dots. You do have similar things that you do in a multiple choice, and we'll talk about that more. But again, notice that each 3 dots does have something different. We're going to go down to the linear scale. Just to remind you what the linear scale looks like, because that's not highly used very often. This is an example of a linear scale. How do you feel today? Awful or amazing? I'm right in the middle, right? So you have a scale of some sort, right? So this is an example of a linear scale, and this is what we're going to build. So we're going to go back to the linear scale. We're going to change the question type to a linear scale. Are we seeing a rinse and repeat process here? Linear scale. And this is where you can adjust the scale if you choose to, maybe all the way up to 10 if you choose to, or you could, I think, start at 0. So you can adjust that if you want. So what is your scale going to be? 0 to 10, 1 to 10, 1 to 5. That's up to you. In this example, I just did 1 to 5. I also believe people get confused, is 1 is good, or is 2 good, or is 5 good, or 1 bad. So I think labeling that is very important. So 1 is awful in this case, and 5 is amazing. Again, this could be up to you, but it's important that you actually do that. And I did misspeak earlier. This isn't the one where you can add images. I use that in a different question type, so I apologize, but you can do that with emojis. With that, you have that option. But again, you might want to check the 3 dots. There's not that much with linear scales. Just adjusting the description, also known as the help text. The next one is multiple choice grid, multiple choice grid. Rate your Google Workspace apps. So let's look at the form and see what we're building. This is an example of the multiple choice grid. We had the app on the left-hand side, and then tell me how you feel about that app using the different columns, okay? So that's what we're building here. So we're going to go ahead and select multiple choice grid. So again, this is very much like a table, also known as a grid. So how do you want the rows to be displayed? What is your choice of rows in this case? Well, our rows are actually going to be Gmail, calendar, and I'm using the tab button. That works really well. Calendar to get to the next field, and drive. Those were the rows that were on the left-hand side. The columns in this case was awful. Again, I would not use these choice of words, but you get the point. So in my columns. And again, I'm just using the tab, and amazing. I will be humble and honest. This is one I struggle visually for some reason. I don't know why. But I always like to, is this the right question type I want for this one? So I will always go to the preview for sure on this one, because sometimes I get this one mixed up with the other grid. So how is it that I want this to work? So I really like to look at the preview. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. It's just a mental block for me for some reason. And so this is really good to just, oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my form. So I kind of see that I'm on the right path. So that's amazing. But let's look at some of the things. Notice this question type is slightly different for the required. Notice require response for each row. Sometimes you might not want them to respond to calendar, or you do not want them to respond to drive. You can't define it by which row you want, but you want to give them option to be able to not fill out all of them. So in this case, we do want them to fill out how they feel about each app in each row. Okay. So then again, check the 3 dots, see what you have available. You do have the option to limit to 1 response per column. So you have that other way of looking things as well. So you have some ways to customize the response quantity on that particular question type. For this example, we're going to go ahead and require a response in each row. So they have to fill out an answer for Gmail, calendar, and drive. The next one is to select your availability for training. So this one I think is really powerful. So the next question is select your availability for training. This is a checkbox grid. So we're going to go ahead and go down to the drop down and select checkbox grid. And same concept, we would have our rows and we have our columns. I'm going to go back to the doc here because I don't want to copy all that or type all that. So I'm going to go back to find that question. And that is select your availability of training. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to copy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to paste that in my rows, and I can probably handle in the columns AM and PM. Again, you can add more columns, as you can see, but in this example, we're just adding 2. Again, notice this one, require a response for each row. Well, this is an example where I do not have an NA option. So they're going to tell me they're available in the AM, but they might not be because I'm making them fill out at each row. Well, that's not going to work, right? You got to remember, how's the scenario? So in this case, I do not want to require a response for each row. Now, some cases you might, but this one I don't. And same concept, limit to 1 response per column. That's not going to work for my particular question type either, right? Right? I want them to tell me, are they available or not? Select what you can. That's how I'm building the question. So you can really find out by now, it's how are you trying to build it and how do you want them to respond? You have ways to customize it, right? It's not a standard way for them to fill it out. So I'm going to leave that one as is. The next one's pretty simple. Enter today's date and time. Go ahead and click on that. You do have the option to select date. And then you'll notice when you select date, you do also have the option to include time in the 3 dots. So it's up to you. I'm just showing you that as an example, but you can include time, date, and time. You can do one or the other. So that's pretty self-explanatory there. The next one is, I just want to make sure. The next one is provide a 1-word or short phrase and how you think training has gone. Now, remember, this is where it's really a shorter line. You'll notice this is where it is a shorter line. It's not as long as the paragraph. Oops, wrong one. I got too many up here. There we go. Notice this one is the shorter line, and this one is a longer one, okay? So the short text one is the one we're working on next. Provide 1 or short phrase, how you think training has gone. Click on that question type as we've done in the past, and change this one to short answer. Sorry, I'm getting a little frozen here. So provide 1 word or short answer, change it to, notice you have short answer or paragraph. In this case, we're going to go ahead and do short answer. And then we're going to notice down here at the bottom of the 3 dots, you do have some response validation. We will address this more in the advanced training because this is probably one of the highly requested options here, where we can actually adjust by how much number, length, regular expression, but there's a lot of ways to do some data validation or response validation when it comes to text. So just be aware of that because maybe you want them to fill out an amount larger than 100. Maybe you want them to have a text length of 140 characters because it's a Twitter feed. There's a lot of options here. We're not going to mess with that today. We're just going to review it. So I'm going to go ahead and close that and not have any response validation on this particular question. We will do regular expression in the next training and how to do a regular expression for a phone number. The next one is a paragraph question. Provide a detailed description. Notice that you do have a paragraph option. This is, again, same response validation options that you have. So keep that in mind. A lot of times I will use, in my particular case scenario, we'll have all the questions, and then at the bottom, provide any comments or feedback. One thing that I sometimes forget, and I just want to remind you, is that I will uncheck that comments and feedback to make it required. Some people don't feel comfortable providing comments and feedback, or they just don't feel anonymous enough. So sometimes you just got to be really careful when you want it to be required or not required. Okay. The next thing is, how is your day going? Now, remember, this is where we go back to the question if you are having a good day or a bad day. If I say good day, it's going to take me to the happy smiley face. If it's going to a bad day, it's going to take me to the sad face, right? So we're going to use that section based on answer feature, okay? So first of all, we're going to use the multiple choice question. So in that case, let's go ahead and change the question type for "Are you having a good day?" to a multiple choice. Good day. How is your day going? And we're going to make it a multiple choice question. Okay. Once we do that, we're going to do option 1 is good. Option 2 is bad. Okay. Now, notice then at the 3 dots, we are going to use the feature go to section based on answer. Okay. And we will come back to this question. Okay. So what happens is then we will continue, we will adjust this as we build it. Okay. So now we've made a question that's going to be conditional. If they choose good, they're going to go to a different section. If they choose bad, they're going to go to a different section. Okay. So now we've got this condition question. We're using either multiple choice or drop down to do that feature. Those are the only two, right? So now notice I have already inserted a section 2 and 3. Now, I don't expect you to know how to insert sections, but to insert a section, what you do is you actually click on the plus or the pause button is what I look like it. It's the pause button will allow you to insert a section. Now, some things that are lessons learned. One thing you do not have in Google Forms, as you do in all the other doc editors, is you do not have file version history. Okay. You do not have file version history. Okay. It does automatically save as you go, but you do not have the capability of making a mistake and going back to a version. Okay. Why I'm telling you now in this particular area is I cannot tell you that even myself has deleted an entire section and I've kind of had to redo it. So be very careful when moving sections or deleting sections, because when you delete a section, you actually delete the entire content in that section. So if Good had a whole bunch of questions inside there and I get click happy and decide to delete that section or do something else, sometimes I will have to start over. Okay. So the best way to ever delete a section, in my humble opinion, is to make sure it's empty like these. There's nothing underneath it. All you're doing is just removing this section. Okay. So don't go up here and decide to delete this section. You will be crying. You might have an option, but if you delete this section, it's going to erase all those questions underneath. So be very careful on that. And we learned that there is no, that's right, file version history. I hope that changes down the road. But at the current time, it does not stand and does not have that capability. Okay. So we already learned how to insert section. We've also learned that it's to be careful of ever deleting a section, right? So now what we're going to do next is we're going to go down. We're actually going to add a question now. We're going to, I forgot this part. I apologize. We're going to go, I'm out of order a little bit. I forgot we need to add a question type. We're going to learn how to add a question on the go. And we're going to use the upload feature. Okay, so we're going to put that right in between the paragraph and how is your day going. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on the plus button and add a question. Okay, now depending on where your cursor was at is where the question got answered, but we're going to fix it. Don't worry. So wherever your cursor was or whatever was selected is where that particular question was put in. Okay, so my cursor was way up at the top, not exactly where I wanted it, but we're going to fix it. The question that we're asking now is we're going to ask them to attach a file. So I'm going to go ahead and type attach file in the question. And then you will then see that I'm going to change it to file upload. Okay. Stop and read what it says. This is so important. Can't tell you how many times I get this question. When you attach a file to a Google form, the following stands. They have to have a Google account. Doesn't have to be a state of Iowa account. Could be jnv14@gmail. It could be any kind of Google account. But for them to upload a file, they have to have a Google account. Please read those pop-ups when that happens. It will not work for you. Google is warning you. Respondents will be required to sign into Google, meaning they have to. And a security measure is why that stands. So now that we know that, I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. Okay. If I did not have my settings correct, that is another place I would go if that applies to you. Okay. Then you can actually customize this to specific file types, maximum files, and so much more. The file upload concept works great inside your own agency or people that you work with in the state of Iowa, okay, that have what? A Google account, okay? So when they do upload a file into this Google form, they actually will have you, the creator, the owner of the form, will have a new folder inside your drive, okay? And we will show you this in a minute. Now, we know some of the hiccups with the file upload. There are some things changing down the road, but at the current time, it stands as I directed you. They have to have a Google account. Now, I do not know where your attached file question ended up, but where it should be is right before how is your day going. So I'm going to use the drag option. By clicking on that, you'll notice your mouse has now changed into a compass. And then I can drag it to the location. And this is a little clunky, I will be honest, a little clunky on your larger forms, but you can drag it to the location that you want it. So I'm just holding it down and it just keeps moving down to the location I want. And I want it right before how is your day going. Now, we didn't have this in the original form because it's just less clicks, but we did want to add this in here so we know how this works, okay? Now, let's go back to the section based on answer. So now we've uploaded a file, question type. We do need to do, if they go to good, they need to go to good. If they go to bad, they need to go to bad. So with that, we're going to go back to section 2 of 3, not go back, just go to it. And let's just learn how to add an image, okay? So let's go ahead and notice on the right-hand side, we have a lot of options here. Import questions from a different form. We have an option to add a section header, which is really nice, or title or description of what it says. Sometimes we need it to kind of break it down in titles within the long forms, okay? The other option is you do have add image, add video. In this case, we're going to show you how to add an image. So go ahead and type add image. You could obviously upload your own image, but in just our training purposes, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go to Google image search. I'm going to go to Google image search, and I'm going to go ahead and select, search for, the word a smile. Remember, good day, bad day, smiley face, right? I'm looking for a good smiley face. Select one that represents a good day. I'm going to go ahead and select the first one, and I'm going to click insert. And now you'll notice you can actually give it an image title. We know by now 3 dots will give you more options. So we can notice we can align it, we can remove it, we can change it, we can do all sorts of different things if we choose to. If you click on it, you can make the smiley face smaller by selecting it and just bringing it down. So this is an example of what you can do within the question types as well. So notice that you did have options to add images within the questions answers as well. So by now we notice this is the image icon. So anytime you see the image icon, it gives you the capability of adding an image in that particular area. So the questions, the questions text box, you can add image. You can also add images in some of the question types as well, such as multiple choice, I believe checkboxes. So just be aware of that icon, okay? Let's repeat that same process and go to bad, and just go ahead now to the bad section and add an image and do a sad face. And you can repeat that or leave it the same size, whatever works for you. It does not matter. Okay. So now that we've kind of got the good and the bad, okay, now we kind of need to go back and figure out based on answers. So we've got section 1, which is the very beginning. We got section 2, which is good. And now we have section 3, which is bad. Now, we already know if they go to section, if we go back to how is your day going? Now that we've got our questions figured out, we have it all figured out, we need to go back to how is our day going and set the condition based on the answer. So good should then take them to the good section. So you're going to select good. Bad's going to take them, if they select bad, it's going to go to section 3 with the title bad. Awesome. Okay. Notice when you click on that, you actually have it to go back to, if you wanted to, understanding Google Forms. But again, you got to be really careful when you do that. Okay. Or if they hit bad, you could just send them to submit the form, depending on your scenario and how you build the form. It really, and this is why it's really, really important to always test it in the live portion before you go live. And even better yet, have someone else that did not build it test it. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay. Good, bad. Okay. Let's just double check. So with that, good, if they go to good and they're done with good, where are they going next? They're going to submit the form, right? Which is not this next section in chronological order, right? Good that it comes in bad. I changed it. If they fill out good, they're done with good. All they need to do is submit the form. There's no other action needed for that, right? We filled out the form. We saw how it worked, right? Same thing with bad, but that is the end of the form. So automatically at the end of the form, what are you doing? You're submitting, right? So you kind of have to guide it not only in the question, but then you have to guide it in the sections. So if that's the last section you want them to do, depending on the condition, you need to send them to submit form, right? Or new to another section that you might have built. Sometimes you can have multiple sections in here and building a very dynamic form, like a web quest. This is what I want you to do. So be aware of that. Those are important things to do. Okay, so with that, we have now set up our form. Now let's customize it to fit our branding guidelines. Okay. So what we're doing next is we're in objective 6, is we're going to adjust a header and theme. So for those that are still following along, great. If not, no big deal, but this is a great template for you to steal and borrow for future. You'll notice in our form that we did, we had a customized header. Maybe not the most professional one, but you can actually customize using Google Drawing. And if you attended my Google Drawing training, you'll know how well I love Google Drawing as well. So what you do here is you can take this template and make a copy of it. If you make a copy of this template, it's the exact size that you need to make a Google form header. It's the perfect size. So go ahead and make a copy. Now, so what that tells you is you can learn Google Drawing and make your own, and it's the exact same size that you need to upload a perfect header inside Google Form. So first thing you should do is go ahead and name it and put it with your other form documents. And I'm going to put it in that folder header, that folder that we created earlier. Google Forms training. This is just repeat and rinse and go from there. All right, now this is Google Forms. Let's customize it. Go ahead and you could just type in your name by clicking on the instructor, double click in there and put your name on there just so you know. that it's yours. But notice the size of this document, this Google Drawing. So if we just look at the file page setup and we look at the pixels, this is the exact size that you need. I always look at pixels. It's 1600 by 400. It has to be that dimensions to fit well within Google Forms header. Tip or trick, fun tip or trick. One of my pet peeves is when I don't see banners that have their branding guidelines. It's a simple fix. 1600 by 400 in Google Drawing, upload your logo for whatever agency you are, put your contact information. You have made a very good branding Google form. It looks more professional instead of colored pencils, right? So this is a quick way to do that. So you have a copy for future. And if you're new to Google Forms, you can go to my Google Drawing page. Or sorry, if you're new to Google Drawing, you can go to Google Drawing and learn how to do this. But feel free, click on the heart, make it red, something, whatever the case may be. You've adjusted this header. Now that you've got this header exactly the way you like it, now you need to get this header into Google Forms. So what you do is you use the tool Google Drawing to create this magical Google form header. Then you need to file, download this particular image or this drawing into a PNG or JPEG. Either one works. I usually use PNG. It's going to download it on your local computer, wherever you can find it. In my case, it'll go into my downloads. And now I need to upload that particular image into Google Forms. So now I'm going to go back to the sample that we've worked on all day long. And I'm going to go to the palette up at the top. You will find a palette. And this is where you customize the theme. You go to the theme, and then you'll notice you can obviously choose an image and select a default. We'll do that in a minute. Or you can change any of these colors. But 90% of the time, I will upload the one that I created because it's customized to my particular needs. Instead of a crayon or jelly beans, I'm going to actually go to upload. And I can hit browse and find that PNG or JPEG that you just downloaded. I know mine went to my documents, my downloads. I don't know where yours went. It depends on wherever you saved it. I don't know. But wherever yours is at, go ahead and locate that new file that you downloaded. And then you'll notice it will have the handles around that. Now, if it's not the right size, it's not going to fit quite right. And you can always adjust it. But that's why I gave you the 1600 by 400. So you have the right size to build from. Okay, go ahead and hit done. And you'll notice that it will actually take the images that are applied to that particular image that you upload and help customize that theme color. So again, I put a red heart in there. So it changed my theme color to some red. I can change the background color. I can change the font, whatever that makes it more fit your branding guidelines. So that's what mine looks like. It might look slightly different for yours, but man, it's starting to look like a really professional Google form. So now that we've made our own header, again, please feel free to look at what I have already provided you. There's a lot of resources within that as well. Now we're doing objective 7, which is response tab. We want to do some things before we actually try to test this form out. So response tab is another option within the edit portion. And there's a few things I want to do before we start filling out the form. So within your form, you'll notice we were in the question area inside our edit portion of the form. We have been really updating this form with all the different edit questions or question types. Now we're ready to kind of get ready and prepare to send this form out. So let's look at our responses and make sure that we have everything ready to go. Obviously, we have not sent this out to our constituents to fill out. So what we need to do is get prepared for that. So in the response portion, you'll notice there is 3 dots. There is an option in that 3 dots under the response tab. So if you go to the response tab, you will see there's 3 dots and you have the option to get email notifications for new responses. This is helpful for like a tech request form, order form. I want to know when someone submits this form automatically. I want to know, as the creator or editor of this form, I'm supposed to take action on that particular submission. Maybe I need to help them. I want to be notified every time. So then let Google do the work for you. So you can actually click on the 3 dots, get email responses for new responses. Okay. Next thing you do is then I want this in a spreadsheet format as well. Now we're going to the third part of the form. So in here, in the response tab, you see the green icon, or you see the 3 dots where it says select response destination, gives you the options to do both. Okay. So I'm going to, either way, click on the green icon or select response. You're going to get this pop-up. This pop-up will allow you to create a new spreadsheet. That's usually what I do. There are very few times where I will actually have these responses of this form go into an existing spreadsheet. There is times, but more than likely, I create a new one. I would suggest you to do the same and create. Since we did a good job infrastructuring our Google form, then it's inside that folder already. How nice is that? It also will name it the same way the form was created because it's linked to that form. Because inside your spreadsheet now, you will then see under Tools, you will see the option to, that's right, manage your form. I don't need a pop-up right now. Thank you. Under Tools, you will see the option to, that's correct, I'll repeat that again, manage form. Meaning, that's right, you can go to the edit portion of the form, live portion of the form. Do you think I made those words up? No. Okay. So it goes back and forth. You can see it's already linked because the option to do is to unlink it, which is not something very many people do. But that's why it's important to understand those 3 parts. So I wasn't taking you down a rabbit hole. Okay, now that we have the spreadsheet ready, let's do objective 8. And I might just go over just a few minutes, but not very long, just to make sure we keep a good pace. But now we're in objective 8. It's time to send out the form, okay? And then we're going to actually send out the form to ourselves because that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to review the results, okay, to ourselves. All righty. So with that, let's find the way that I will tell you never to do it. Do not send the form out the following way, okay? Do not click the send button. You can click the send button. That's fine. You can click the send button. But do not, trust me with my 10 years of experience, do not do it this way. Do not send an email this way. You've been invited to fill out a Google form. It just doesn't look as clean, okay? Plus, you make them click a few more times this way. So do not use the email option under the send, okay? However, feel free to use the link icon or the embedded link icon. Those work, well, this one you can't do because it's file upload, but you can use this link if you want. Most of the time, if you're not using file upload, you could use the embedded, okay? The other cool thing is if you could always shorten the URL, that looks prettier. But let me show you my favorite way, okay? So know that that's fair, and please know for sure, do not do it this way. Under the email tab, do not do it that way. Please, 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 okay? What I do, and again, my years of experience, is I go to the live portion, also known as the preview portion, correct? That is the I. Now, before I do that, notice the different URLs. The URL says edit hashtag responses. I'm in the edit portion of the form. I'm going to click on the I, also known as the preview. It's going to change the URL to, that's right, view form. It says view form. Copy that URL. Copy that URL. Now, most people will either, this is the URL you would put on the website. This is the URL you would put in a newsletter. This is the URL you put inside an email. This is the URL you put inside the chat. This is the URL, fill in the blank. This is for the end users, the people to fill out the form, just like we did earlier, okay? This is the one that you put in the Google Doc. Now, most people will send it in a Gmail format. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Gmail, and I'm going to compose an email. And I'm going to give you my best practice. So if you want to follow along, send yourself an email. So I'm going to hit compose, and I'm going to show you what I normally do. I would send an email to the group of people that I would want to normally send, but obviously for hands-on portion, I don't know who you need to send it to, but I would suggest sending it to yourself so you can kind of see how it works. And give me a minute to pull it up. So first thing is you got to put someone in the to. Now keep in mind that's still copied in my clipboard. So I'm just going to go ahead and send it to myself. In this case, my persona is trainer 13. So I'm going to send it to myself just for this example. You always give it a subject line. I'm going to say test form. And now I would say, hello, please complete this form. That's what I would do with more verbiage, right? I would highlight the word form. Highlight the word form. And I would say this link, whatever it is, right? The word is there. Highlight that. Click on the link icon at the bottom. Click on the link icon. And then I would notice it says text to display is the word that you put in there, link, fill in the blank, whatever it is. And then I'm going to paste the web address that I just copied, which is that long URL. And I would do the view form link that I told you about inside there. Okay. And now I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to send it to myself. Okay. That looks a lot better than even the short URL that Google Form gave us earlier. It's professional. It tells them what action they need to do. And you're using the tool called rich text editing. Okay. Rich text formatting, however you want to call it. But that is really important. Okay. Really cool to do that. Now, the form has been sent out. We need to test our form. Always test it with someone else. This is your first form ever. Always have someone else test it out. Okay, so you can see I put a little homework assignment for you for those that are following along. Always send it to myself. I'll test it out and give you good, bad, or ugly. You're saying, hey, great job, need to work on that, right? Always have someone test it out for you. Okay. Now we're going to review the results and we're going to actually fill out that form and just make sure that we can see some results, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my email, and I'm going to, and you guys, those that are following on, go ahead and open that email or go to the live portion of the form, which by now we know how to get to the live portion of the form that you've been creating. It's the I, and go to your form. If you did not send it to yourself, get to the live portion and fill out that form. Fill out your form. So you either go to the email that you sent to yourself or fill it out. So I'm just going to quickly go through this because we've already went through this process. But I'm just going to, for those who are like, oh, I didn't do that right, make a note of it and look back to the video at a later time and see what you might have done wrong. But I'm just going to go ahead and fill this out without explaining what we're doing here because we already talked about how we were going to build it. But I do want to look at the responses here shortly. Oh, what did I just do? Now I'm going to attach a file. You can attach a file. We didn't really talk about this before, but I can actually upload, and I do have a PDF that I'm going to actually upload. You can actually upload from another source than Google Drive or whatever the case may be. So be aware of that. I don't want documents. I want desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and click upload. I could have added more files. You can see that I didn't really set any limitations. I'm going to go ahead and select good and hit next. And then you can see if you want to double check to make sure you set it up correctly, go ahead and hit back. Just do bad just to kind of see that things are working correctly. It's always good practice to check both scenarios. Don't assume. Okay, that looks good. Now I got to submit. All right, let's go back and I'm going to do good again. Again, there's no wrong way what you're doing. I'm just showing you different scenarios. I'm going to make sure once I select good, it goes to the submit button because it didn't look like it was set up correctly, but I think I did. Good. So I've got the submit. So awesome. So both of those scenarios gave me the right condition, right web quest. Awesome. So now let's look at our results. So you can see that your URL has changed. It says form response. You could adjust and type in the word edit to get to the edit portion if you choose to. So if you get a little lost, you can always type the word edit. I think that works. I say that and I'm going to maybe be wrong. Don't do that. Go back to your form. I know I shouldn't have done that because it does work differently for responses. I forgot. So don't do that. So you go back to your Google form in the edit portion. So you know where it's at. It's in your Google Drive folder infrastructure if you've got too many tabs open, but probably already open in your tabs. Now, if you filled out that form, you should have one response at least appear. You can see then in the response tab, you have the option of a summary option. You can see it gives you a nice graph format, which really is cool because now you can copy this information into a Google slide and paste it as an object, which means once something is updated on this Google form, you update object in Google Slides and it's real time. How nice is that now? It's not just a snapshot capability. If you missed that information, check the Google Doc or check the currents page as that is a new update. With that, you also have the option under questions. So maybe you want to look at a quick summary of the questions. How does everybody feel? Who is their favorite Google Workspace app? You have some option by question. You can navigate through all 11 questions. So maybe you're focused on one particular area of that form. You can do it this way as well. And then last thing, you can go to the individual. Okay. You can look at the individual respondent to see what their response were. So depending on what are you trying to look at, that's the question you have to ask. Are you looking at the summary of the responses? Then you go to summary. If you want to look at the particular question in the Google form, go to the question. If you're looking for someone's individual response, you can do that. You do have some options under the individual is you can print out. So some people may want to do that as a registration form. Some people may want to delete. If you do delete a respondent from here, it does not delete it from the sheet. There is double duty. So if I hit the delete button for Trainers 13's response, it will remove it from the summary inside the respondent part of the Google form, but it will not remove it from the spreadsheet. Speaking of the spreadsheet, let's go check out the spreadsheet portion. So if you can't find it, you can always click on the spreadsheet icon as well inside the edit portion. You can always go back to your edit portion and click on the spreadsheet icon right here. That will take you directly to view responses in sheet, or you can find it in your plethora of tabs like myself today. You can see then I have all the responses come in a spreadsheet format, and I strongly ask you to check it out and see how it comes in. What's really cool is when you do a file upload, as I just did, it does actually go inside your Google Drive. The file upload concept does not work in a shared drive. So if you're thinking this would be great to put in a shared drive, your form cannot be in a shared drive. That does not mean shared with me. It means a shared drive, also formerly known as Team Drive. Okay. Be aware of those hiccups. Very rare, but a question I have received. With that, when you attach a file, it also, if you click on it, you will see the picture of that, or you will see the file itself. It's uploaded to the owner of the file, and it belongs to the owner, or excuse me, the owner of the form. And you will see then you can find it inside. If you click on the three dots, my example is a PDF. You will find it in a folder infrastructure inside your Google Drive. So all those files that you uploaded, as in this example, so every respondent's file that's been uploaded will go into one central location in your Google Drive. And you see how important it is, that's right, to create a good folder infrastructure when you're working with Google Forms, because that folder that we just talked about is inside my Google Forms training folder that I created earlier. So you will see it has the file, it has the folder name, attached file. Guess what that was? That's the question type. That was the, not a question type, excuse me, that was the question that was asked. Please attach a file, right? It said attach file. That was the question name. That's the word I'm looking for. Then you can see, then it's the file responses, and you can see only in this example, there's only one. However, if I went in there again and did this, it would then do exactly what I just did with a different document. So how cool is that? You can see that in this case, trainer 13, which is the person that created the form, is the owner. So this does not work in a shared drive, okay? But it does work within shared with me or in my drive. Okay, so just be aware of that. You can also find the location of that folder in the question type as well, or in the summary. So you just have to go to that particular question that has the attachment of the file. So like, for example, we know the question was down here, attached file. You also can locate the folder inside the respondent as well. So there's many ways, or you go to the question area and go to that question. You will be able to view folder there as well. Almost done. A few things I want to point out is when you do sign up for notifications, how does that work within your email? So it's important in a lot of forms to be notified when a form response has taken place. So we did that before we even created our spreadsheet, if you recall. You'll notice now you will see if you signed up for that, when you sign up for email notifications, when the email or when the form has been submitted, you will get a email like this from Google, very generic, but it does pop into your inbox saying someone has updated that form by submitting a response. And when they submit a response, you will see the respondent's name, in this case, trainer 13, and you'll be able to view the summary. So it does notify you. One more thing to be realized, if you don't like this view, there is another way to receive notifications when a form is submitted. The other way is through Google Sheets. So if you don't like going to the edit portion of the form and you live and die by the spreadsheet, for future, do the following. Go to your spreadsheet, go to tools. It's tools. So you go to that spreadsheet that you've been tied to that Google form, and you go to tools, and you would then see the option of notification rules. Click on notification rules. You have the option when a user submits a form, get an email right away or a daily digest. Your choice. So I use this one better because I actually work out of the Sheets portion versus the edit portion. I do all my work in the Sheets side of things within Google Forms, so I will always do my notifications through Sheets versus the email in Google Forms. Your call, your web quest. How is it that you want to do it? As I wrap up, I appreciate those that stayed on. I apologize for going long, but as Google keeps enhancements, I'm going to have to make these into 3, but I don't know how I'm going to do that. But I want to remind you, there is plenty of resources on there as well, especially when it comes to the question types. I really did spend some good chunk of time in preparing for this training to actually, depending on what you're trying to do in that particular area if you want to learn more. So if for those who have first time attended my training, we know by now the bookmark will take you to a resource, a written instruction. If you see a video icon, it will take you to a YouTube or another video format medium. So please be aware of that. Each file question type has more help for you regarding that. I really hope that you play with this Google form, have a coworker test it out, or finish it up and maybe send it to me. I'll be more than happy to give you advice. Google Form is a very powerful tool. As you will see in the advanced Google Forms training, we will dive into some workflows or mail merges, making certificates, doing all sorts of fun things. So it's a really powerful tool to combine both the power of sheets, forms, and then add-ons and using AppScript. You don't even have to even know what an app is. It just has to go find it and fill out the fields. It's really simple. So again, I hope you can join the advanced Google Forms training. You can get a sneak peek. It's all posted if you kind of want to see what's there. We will do the video next week. So with that, I appreciate your time and your efforts of learning more about Google Workspace, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.